Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Bob Littman, Vice President of the City Club's Board of Directors. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Nancy Jacobson, co-founder and CEO of No Labels. Until the 1980s, Americans generally expressed a neutral view of the opposing political party. This has changed dramatically as the country has moved towards hyper-partisanship. A 2014 Stanford study found that politics, not race, is becoming the deepest divide in America. And it can be argued that our political leaders are the ones responsible for this shift, often directing hostility to the opposing party and refusing to work collaboratively across party lines to solve problems. On Tuesday night, bidding farewell and thanks to his supporters of over his 11-month campaign, presidential candidate Marco Rubio's parting words reiterated this trend. He said, quoting here, "America is in the middle of a real political storm, a real tsunami, and we should have seen this coming. Look, people are angry and people are frustrated. From a political standpoint, the easiest thing to have done in this campaign is to jump on all these anxieties I've just talked about to make people angrier, make people more frustrated. The politics of resentment against people will not leave us a fractured party. They are going to leave us as a fractured nation. The political storm Mr. Rubio describes, one of resentment and anger towards people of opposing views, is exactly what Ms. Jacobson's organization, No Labels, works to counter by encouraging and facilitating collaboration among political leaders of both major parties. By bringing Democratic, Republican, and independent leaders together, No Labels tries to address the nation's pressing problems by not challenging anger, but by listening closely and being a common champion of common ground. Ms. Jacobson got her start in politics while she was still an undergraduate student at Syracuse University by holding a fundraiser for Colorado Senator and Vice President candidate Gary Hart. Since then, she has worked with some of the biggest names in Washington, including Senator John Kerry, Vice President Al Gore, President Bill Clinton, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. For 20 years, Ms. Jacobson has served as a political entrepreneur, pioneering new and innovative ways to tackle entrenched political challenges. Her efforts have spearheaded organizations such as Next Generation, a political action committee devoted to supporting moderate senator candidates, and Third Way, a think tank of the moderate wing of the progressive movement. No Labels was founded in 2010 with a mission to address politics of problem solving in order to combat rising hostility. And Nancy did want to remind me, this is a personal mission for her. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Club, please join me in welcoming Ms. Nancy Jacobson.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress, I have worked for about 30 years, but I am a volunteer. I founded this organization, and I work as a full-time volunteer 7 days a week. So I want to start with a little activity. So if everybody wants to show me their hands for a minute, I want you to use your hands to show all of us, show me, how much you would be willing to work with another party or work together across the aisle. So if you clamp your hands together, right, like this, never, ever, you're not going to do it. Nobody's ever going to get you to do it. If you go out wide, always open to compromise, always, and here in between. But clamped like this, never, ever, don't come to me, ever. Arms out wide, I'm ready, I'm open. I just want to know who's in this room. Where are we? Oh, my goodness. Okay, so this is great. I don't see anybody. I don't think anybody's clamped here. And then I just want to ask you, so our leaders in Washington, your senators, your congressmen, where are they? Where do you think they are? Where are they? Does anybody? Oh, my God. Okay. So, but there is, back there's one. But really, can you imagine the statement this sends? And let me just ask you, because the primary was just the other day, the candidate you voted for, who is that person? Is it a person that will never, ever, or is it a person that is open? Bernie Sanders. Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, okay, so hopefully there's hope. With all this in mind, I wanted to know, it's true, I had an entirely different speech prepared for you today, several weeks ago, And I was looking forward to sharing with you something that was much more upbeat, more urgent, something to engage you in a vision and a plan to restore common sense and constructive governing to our country. And I still believe deeply in that vision, and I'll share it with you. But I tore up that version of my speech because the truth of the matter is that it's tough to be really upbeat right now. And I can't tell you, in all honesty, that we're moving rapidly toward a better day in politics and leadership, because we can't, as a nation, pivot that quickly from where we are to where we want to be. We're just not out of the woods yet, and that's okay. We will get there, but it will be a tough road. I would like to hear from all of you whether you're feeling what I'm feeling. The tone of the presidential primaries, from the words being used to the deep divisions that are being revealed, mostly makes me feel sad. And sometimes I feel frightened, especially as a parent thinking of what my daughter is witnessing. And sometimes I feel shame, mostly on behalf of the candidates, even though they don't appear to experience shame themselves. Raise your hand if you're feeling any of these feelings right now: sadness, fear, shame. Okay. We hear a lot about anger among the electorate. Are you angry? Are you frustrated? So I think we are all tremendously justified in our feelings, and leaders don't appear to be listening to us, and that's upsetting. My organization, No Labels, was actually born out of frustration, even though it is driven and fueled by terrific optimism, patriotism, and faith in our country. When No Labels was founded, so many people were so exasperated with the state of political nastiness and paralysis in Washington, D.C., similar to how we all feel today. It felt like the people were not being heard by the leaders. The people were begging the politicians to stop fighting and start fixing. We brought those voices, some Democrats, some Republicans, some independent, many together under the No Labels cause. We formed a movement based on those things that work, on uniting our leaders to solve problems. Specifically, our big idea, the notion that leaders should set goals at the start of the policy-making process and then work on the specifics, to develop a framework to solve problems. We know that Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton did that in the 90s. They first agreed on a goal of a balanced budget, and then they worked on the specifics on how to solve it. That is called building a framework for solving problems. What if the next president, in the first 30 days of his term, or her term, calls a bipartisan leaders meeting with the leaders and gets buy-in from everybody on what goals they can work on together? That would be transformational. That requires real leadership. This simple idea of change from business as usual was powerful enough that we were granted a Senate hearing June 17th when our leaders, John Huntsman and Joe Lieberman, and now Senator Evan Bayh, testified before the Senate committee. Another way to put it, we've taken a very calm and rational approach to solving the biggest challenge of all, which is unifying our country. Our unique proposition is the creation of a new process for governing that is based on deliberate, effective steps. More than just calling for this new method of getting leaders to solve problems and agreeing to goals as the first step, we're also advocating for 4 specific goals. I think they're up there on this chart. 25 million new jobs in the next decade, securing Social Security and Medicare for another 75 years, balancing the budget by 2030, and energy security by 2024. All of them are interrelated. The second step is negotiating the policy details that make achievement of the goals possible. Simple, right, straightforward, productive. But right now, I get it. It's hard to imagine not only who our next president will be, let alone getting to the point where our leaders are agreeing on goals. Okay, so now for some good news. And as you all know, living in Ohio, swing voters do matter. They matter specifically in the general election. They can make the difference in who wins and who loses, especially if a candidate decides to run a swing campaign and directly appeal to them. A campaign that attempts through language and policy to unite citizens rather than divide them. A message that can allow a leader to get to Washington and build bridges quickly because time was not spent attacking and tearing down the other side completely. We hope for that kind of campaign in the general, but if we don't get that, there are still possibilities. A president needs the opposing party to pass legislation. So having leaders willing to work with either party to negotiate and solve problems becomes vital. I know it's hard to see the light at the end of this year's political tunnel, but I'm telling you, we can get there. The positive impact of our organization and the enormous potential of the constructive work we're going to do this year rivals any other interest group in Washington for a number of key reasons. First, there's no one else like No Labels. We are the only organization in Washington, D.C. that works daily to bring both sides of the political aisle together for solutions to the big issues. Second, we're supported enthusiastically by rank-and-file voters of all political stripes. We're with over 1 million citizens across this country that are part of our effort. We're supported by our nation's youth. Right now, there are No Labels college chapters, not just on 25 or 75, but 100 college campuses. All of these citizens have something critical in common, and I bet you share this too. We want our leaders to follow through with action and actually do the work of uniting the country when they get into office. We all crave the kind of vision and commitment we know existed in our country's founding fathers. These men didn't always agree with each other. They debated fiercely what the foundation of our country should consist of. The areas where they found agreement are what made our nation so great and so strong. This faith in the strength of agreement is what binds and inspires the citizens of the No Labels movement. The third thing that makes No Labels special is the coalition we've built in Congress, a group called the Problem Solvers Caucus. It has 78 members. We're equally divided between Republicans and Democrats, and we believe this group is going to be closer to 100 by the end of this year. I can't emphasize enough that growing this group is the key to forging peace in Washington, D.C. after the war of the 2016 election. The group is already strong. They already work together. We get members of the caucus together every month to talk about issues they can't agree on. And it's true, it actually happens in Washington on a regular basis because of No Labels. This congressional group has passed 2 original bills, No Budget, No Pay, and Healthcare for Heroes, merging the Department of the Defense with the VA health records when a veteran comes back. And most recently, we've helped to introduce 2 resolutions, one in the U.S. House, one in the Senate, calling for a national strategic agenda on those 4 key goals I mentioned earlier. We have 78 members of Congress from both parties that signed on to the resolution. The coalition of problem solvers that No Labels has put together in Congress, those are the 78 leaders who support our national strategic agenda. They see the strength of these goals and of goal setting generally. And they are ready and willing to work with the next president, who will arrive in January of 2017, and who will be looking to do something in their first 100 to 200 days in office. No Labels has given these leaders a place where that open, collaborative attitude is a good thing, not a political liability. We must grow and support this group of leaders, and I will ask your help in doing that today. This coalition is critical, but of course this group and the new president will also need a playbook. The public policy solutions that put meat on the bones of our 4 agreeable goals. So we are also working on a public policy blueprint that all of these leaders and our new president can follow. While the presidential campaigns continue to divide the nation No Labels is working behind the scenes to develop constructive legislation. We will have actual legislative packages that can be supported by both parties in Congress, ready to go by the time the next president takes office. And on December 5th, we will host an unprecedented, bipartisan meeting in Washington, D.C. to unveil these fresh policy prescriptions to the new presidential administration. We already have Governor Raimondo of Rhode Island, Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas. We already have about 50 congressmen signed up, members of the transition team, and others that will be gathered in one room to discuss these policy solutions. It's never happened before, 1 month after the most divisive election in our lifetime. We are doing this. It's the right thing to do, and somebody's got to do it for the sake of the country's reconstruction after the election war. And the development of these innovative policy ideas is already underway. We have 5 task forces: tax reform, immigration, entitlements, national security, infrastructure, healthcare, and energy are right now being formed to create policy proposals that will attract support from business leaders, community leaders, members of Congress, and constituents. The task force's policy recommendations will be finished by late summer. The December meeting will be a forum to debate, discuss, and to ratify these ideas, presenting a united front alongside solid policy to our new president and leaders of Congress. The timing for this meeting in December is absolutely critical, because the fact is, after a national election, there is a rare and brief opportunity that only comes with the inauguration of a new president, a time in Washington that is as close to a fresh start as our country ever gets. No one has ever bothered to convene a major meeting of leaders during that time. And we've chosen December 5th as a day when productive, bipartisan discussion is possible. We believe it will be the time when the fever breaks. All of these tactics that we employ this year are geared towards one ultimate mission: being a constructive force for a reset with the next president's term. There will be a lot of talk about healing between now and November. And healing is not easy. It's going to take planning and work. No Labels is like Switzerland right now. The world is fighting around us, but we are the peaceful place, the place where ideas and plans can still be formed. And so I've got one more exercise for all of you today here before I close, and it has to do with growing the congressional coalition, the group of problem solvers that is the key to our nation's progress after a divisive election. So I'm going to ask, when you leave this room, these postcards that are, to your 2 senators, to 2 representatives in this area. Maureen has it. She'll pass them out. I'd love you to sign them and to put your name down. And then Maureen, we're going to, within 20 minutes of leaving here, we're going to mail them for you and send it to these offices, because we don't want to take what's happened today and these messages and leave it in the air today. And we don't want the political nastiness to get you all down for too long. The people will be heard, and we must be heard. And also, because this is Ohio, you're going to see all the candidates, the nominees that are coming through in the next many months. And so we'll ask them about this, ask them what they will do, ask them how they will solve these problems when they get to Washington. Will they work with leaders on the other side? Do they believe in these goals? And let them hear it directly from you. So the message we have is stop fighting, start fixing, set goals, work together. And this is what the people want, and the people we know will be heard. So I want to thank Trey. I want to thank the City Club for inviting us here today. And my thought is now, if it's good, Trey Roeder, I don't know if you know him. He's a city councilman from Shaker Heights. He has his own business. Actually, his business, I guess you were formerly with Booz Allen, but he has a business that actually helps companies with transformational change and how do you work your strategies for that. We got to know each other, I guess about a year ago. He'll explain, but he's the reason why I'm here. He said, Nancy, come here to the City Club and hear this. And I really want to applaud you. We've gotten to get to know each other more and more, but you could be doing a lot. You are the future. You are the next generation. And I really applaud your work for getting involved in your community and bringing us here today. Thank you.
As you heard, Nancy Jacobson has been in Washington, D.C. for 30 years, and she knows fully how difficult this mission is. Yet, she gets up every day, 7 days a week, volunteers her time for no compensation, for the sole purpose of making our country better. I think that deserves a round of applause. Nancy asked me to say a few words about why I'm involved with No Labels and what impact we're having already here in Cleveland. There's no better way to explain why I'm involved with No Labels than to tell you a story that just happened this week. On Tuesday night, my son came home from the Model United Nations. This Model UN was held in Columbus. Coincidentally, they were in the same convention center as the Sanders-Clinton debate. So this got me to thinking, what are the similarities and differences between Model United Nations and the real way that we're going about this? So I asked my son, I said, at any point when you were making your arguments, did anyone make fun of someone else's appearance? And he said, no, Dad, no one did that. Did anyone use foul language? No. Were there any posters on the wall saying that these people are wrong and you can't listen to them? Were there any flyers slipped under doors in the middle of the night where people said, you can't listen to this person because they're wrong and here's the horrible things about them that happened and here's photographs and so on? He said, Dad, none of this happened. It turns out that at the Model UN, they were exhibiting model behavior. My son went on to tell me, he said, Dad, they told us to attack the idea, not the person. 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, teenagers. Now compare this to what's happening. Why am I part of No Labels? Because when my son comes home from Model UN, I want him to be able to turn on the TV and watch what's really happening without being embarrassed. I want him to see that model behavior demonstrated by our political leadership, and that's not what we're getting today. What is the impact that we're making? Last night, we met with the Northeast Ohio City Council Association. I'm on the board there, and I thought, while we had Nancy in town talking at the City Club, why not have her talk to a group of locally elected leaders? The Northeast Ohio City Council Association represents about 39 or 40 of the cities here in Northeast Ohio. And I thought it would go well, but I was amazed at the nerve that we struck with this group of people. We ended up having a 2-hour conversation, open dialogue, about the frustrations that these folks are feeling as well, and about how this message of collaboration, of working together, of focusing on the idea, not the person, truly had an impact on them. And already this has set a variety of wheels in motion. One city council talked about a resolution that they want to pass. We had a discussion with some of the leaders this morning about how to get the word out about No Labels. So this is catching fire. This is something where when people hear about it, the more they hear about it, the more they like it. Now, the most common thing I hear from people when they say, when I tell them about No Labels is, that's all well and good, but can we really do this? Can we really make this happen? Well, first, we know that we can because we already are. As you heard, there's 78 people in the U.S. Congress who've already signed on to this. There's resolutions that have been passed as part of No Labels. 8 presidential candidates came and spoke in New Hampshire to 1,000 people, Republicans and Democrats and independents in the same room. But I also firmly believe that this is going to work because it's what the American people want. We want this of our political leaders. We want to work together. We want to collaborate. We understand that there's no one perfect solution to everything. And that's what No Labels is about. So we have the American people who want something, and we have No Labels working on exactly that thing. Now, there's a lot of noise in the process. There's a lot of things that need to happen, and it's not going to be a straight line. But there's no doubt in my mind that No Labels is on the right path, and that if we keep working on this, and if we work on it together, we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Your comments show us how important it is to have good role models for our country and for our children. Thank you. Today, we are enjoying a Friday forum featuring Nancy Jacobson, co-founder and CEO of No Labels. We're about to head into the Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our radio broadcast, webcast, and our new live simulcast at the Parma Snow branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it to @the_City_Club, and our staff will try to work it into the program. We encourage you to make your questions brief and to the point. Holding the microphone today is Content Associate Teddy Eisenberg. Thank you, Teddy. May we have the first question, please?
Good afternoon. You mentioned immigration as one of the task forces in your speech, but I don't see it up there. Will it be definitely addressed, though, on December 5th?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so December 5th, we have about 6 of these task forces, and it actually is something. And, you know, what we're thinking of at No Labels, because it has been a topic that's been so stuck, is there a new way that we can start the discussion on immigration, that we can start moving things? So I'll just share with you a little story that happened about 2 months ago. We were meeting with some of our members of Congress, and our thought was, what if we were able to talk about immigration reform with entitlement reform? What if we could have a conversation together, those two different topics together? And so as we went around the room figuring out where the congressman stood on that, there was a gentleman from probably a red state who said, you know what? If you tie it together like that, I can sell that to my people. I could sell the notion we need to bring new workers in to pay for older workers. I could get that done. And so I thought, maybe there's something here. Maybe we got to think more creatively and freshly. So I went to the woman that runs La Raza, the key Hispanic group in the country, and I mentioned that to her. I mean, she's defeated. I mean, just defeated. And I just said, you know, I had this conversation. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe anybody wanted to have the conversation. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to go back. And actually, 2 days ago, I went back to the congressman, and I said, I heard you said it. Do you mean it? Are you really open to an immigration conversation if it's taught? He said, absolutely. So our next step will be a meeting. He called out some of his crowd together, and I'll bring in, you know, I was meeting with former Senator Mark Pryor the other day, or Mac McClarty, or, you know, we have so many leaders around this organization to come in and start seeing, can we get somewhere there? So it will be there. We're going to talk about it. We may pair it with another issue.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I was wondering if you could help me understand what in 2010 in particular prompted you to found the organization, because when I think back over the last, say, 15 years of our political culture in Washington, 2010 is not a time that I associate with things not getting done. Quite the opposite. In 2010, a lot of things were getting done. Now, you can argue they were the wrong things, or they were being done in the wrong way, or they were being done not on a bipartisan basis. So what was it about 2010?
So personally, you know, I had spent about 14 years working with Senator Evan Bayh. He decided to retire from the United States Senate because he had sort of had it there. And I came up with the idea, figuring out what to work on. But I had seen, you know, and I know this was sort of a year after President Obama was in, but it was divisive. I mean, it was. And, whether we like it, not like it, whatever, the truth was we were seeing, healthcare, it was passed. I think without a single Republican vote, there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of dissension. People were turning off. And I just realized, listen, we have extremes on both sides. We've got to have some sort of moderating force. So that's really what that was.
I'd like to ask you about what are you attempting to do to end the self-segregation? When I was young, you watched Edgar Murrow, Roger Mudd, Huntley Brinkley. Now we are self-segregating ourselves, Fox, MSNBC, BBC, PBS, and also this self-segregation has gotten to the point of where our cities, our zip codes, and our blocks, and even in some cases the people we talk to, all think alike. Thank you.
That, absolutely. And people talk about that a lot. There's only, so much you can do. But I believe, and that's why last night was so incredible to me to see it. That is true. And I don't know if this little organization is going to be able to. But what I see with Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and I'll honestly tell you, everything we do poll. Polling's good because we know where the citizens are, right? And I think what we've got to stay focused on are where people can agree. The majority of people agree on those goals. And I think we hear it everywhere. And everybody, I'd love to hear from all of you. Our Republican friends, our Democratic friends, our independent friends, everybody is uniting now in this sentiment that something's gone wrong in Washington, that 535 leaders up there, for some reason, they're not listening. And I think that's what you see. So it may be different viewpoints, that's true. But that's also what makes America great. We have to respect ideological differences. We want to pride ourselves of respecting all different parts of people, but it also includes ideological viewpoint. But that doesn't mean we can't sit down together, negotiate problems together.
I'm Alex Polovich, the No Labels chapter at the University of Akron.
Oh, great.
And,
that was good. Can we give him a hand? I mean, that's good. Oh, thank you. I didn't know. That's great to see you.
My question is, the congressional problem solvers, how do you hold them accountable for their bipartisan efforts? Like, do you track their voting records, or how do you hold them accountable once they pledge to be bipartisan?
So that's, as anything, we're only about 5 years old, and everything is staged, and it's methodically, done here. Now we're getting to ideas, because it's hard to hold people accountable if we don't have our own ideas. So we're still in that stage, and we're going to be getting to another stage where that will be. So, it's something we are thinking about. I'll be honest, hour or so before we came in here, I was speaking to Governor Huntsman and Senator Lieberman about it, because I do think at a certain point we're going to have to get involved like everybody else does. And we may have to be the group that goes in to a primary, and if there's an obstructionist, somebody that's really an obstructionist on either side, we may have to get involved in those elections. And I think that could be the quickest way to send a signal. I mean, that's nobody's doing that, right? So I think we just have to stay tuned for where that plays out, and if this organization could at least encourage other groups to do that.
Gabriella Kaplan, MD, from LifeWatch Group. How can your organization carry the message out there, since you have connections in Washington and the world, that right now there is a xenophobic spirit throughout the country? And I believe that this is a symptom of dissatisfaction because of the economy. Two things destroyed our economy. One is the expense of the Iraqi war, and the second one, the banking debacle. The banking debacle has used our treasury, and that is because we destroyed the Glass-Steagall Act. What can we do to repair that and carry that message? Because if we don't have laws that are defending our society and our community, it will pit us more and end up in a revolution. What can you do for that?
Well, listen, as we say, what we're focused on strategically, the first 100 days of the next president's term is starting to address some of these issues. I mean, that's our strategy is, well, everybody else, if you can imagine, Washington's pretty quiet right now. I mean, everybody's off campaigning and doing what they do. And most other groups are just sort of waiting around, waiting to see who's going to be president. I mean, we're busy every day getting ready with some thoughts, ideas, stakeholders for this meeting a month after this election. The best we can do is get in there and inject some of these ideas and build coalitions of people that can stand with us to be ready, because the moment of change will be the first 100 days. That's when the fever does break. So that's the best I can say in terms of what we're doing, but you're right to be concerned by all of that. And listen, what can we do? You know, I have to say, I am a volunteer, right? I mean, before this, I didn't love public speaking. It's not my thing, but I feel so concerned about this. What can you all do? And that's why grab one of these things. You don't all understand your power, you know? I mean, I have been around politics. I was the third person hired by Bill Clinton in 1991. I saw how you elect a person president right? I've seen it all. This is the most invigorating, energizing work I've ever done in my life, having seen all of this, because guess what? Every day we make a difference. It's the most amazing thing, the stories I can tell you. But you all, each of you, you don't even understand all the power you have. Any one of you showing up in the district office of any of the people we mentioned and showing up and saying, I want to meet with the district leader head. First of all, they have to meet with you. You're the citizen. And say, listen, why wouldn't you sign on to this resolution? Will you sign on to this resolution to start alerting them, putting them on notice, saying the type of politics, the way you want them to govern? So the only thing I can say is, there's nothing special about me at all. All of us can do something. And I would just implore you, do something when you leave this room. Just send the postcard or call the meeting or look to Trey. Trey has somehow appeared here. We've gotten connected. We saw last night what happened. We're already on the phone with those people. They're going to be writing their own op-ed. Get to Trey. I'm going to volunteer you, Trey. I think your wife's here. I haven't met her yet. Elizabeth.
Get to my wife. How about that?
Where's your? Okay, there's your wife. Okay, but go to this guy. I mean, he's putting his step forward. He's on the city council, and he's willing. He said to us today, Nancy, I'll do it if you need me to be that person. So I hope you get connected to Trey and, try to band together. Small groups always can make a difference if they band together. Small groups. We don't need to solve every problem, but we can.
Hello. I applaud your efforts here. But let's, look at reality here with Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, who compromise is just not part of their language at all. Especially Ted Cruz takes pride in being an obstructionist. So how do you plan to work with either one of those if they become president?
Listen, a lot will happen, and I know it's hard to see, in now, and it's up 8 months from now. We have no idea what it's going to look like, right? But we can't cede our country. So I don't know. I can't tell you who his VP is going to be. I don't know all the factors. I don't know who's really going to be the nominee. But to sit back and just relax and cede it all to whoever these other individuals are, that's not an option. So we're not going to be able to know everything around the corner. All we can do is prepare. All we can do, what you can do in this room, is get your delegation to sign on and hound them in that way. But can you imagine if you have 30 key people in this state and every other state has 30 key people that will be relentless? I'm telling you, you can make a difference that way.
Hi, Nancy. HR 207, it's doable. It's very attainable. But back during No Budget and No Pay, there was an entire agenda. One of the key points that I felt at that time back in D.C. was gerrymandering, because once that can be solved, I think that bipartisanship becomes a little bit more doable instead of having districts the way they're set up. Is that part of an agenda with the problem solvers right now? I know that affects how they get elected, but just a question, because that was part of the agenda back then.
Yeah. I mean, listen, they talk about it. I mean, our last meeting there, how do we approach it? Honestly, we know it's needed, but we don't have 20 years to waste. Honestly. We need the next president's term. We've got to start solving some of these problems. So that's how we think about it. But it's an interesting thing, and I can't promise we're going to be able to pull this off, but we'll give it our best shot. But what if we could look at those obstructionists, and we know who they are, and what if we could run a sensible candidate when we know it's just a small group of people that vote in these primaries, and we could get out the vote with another candidate that could topple one of these candidates? That'll be the quickest, fastest way for redistricting reform, I think, that we could do. So our hope is we could beta test a couple of those races this time, and if it works, I know, because there's just so many serious people around this country that believe in what we do, I hope we could make that come to life.
Thank you for coming to Cleveland, and thank you for your work with No Labels. You mentioned 78 members, I believe, are signed on. What common objections do you hear from those who haven't signed on?
So it's interesting, Trey. We've gotten this a lot, and I'll share one. I don't publicize this a lot, but so there is a congresswoman. She's from Illinois, a good friend, really like her, dynamic Democrat, and she has been very involved in the group, and we wanted her to sign on to the resolution. And her staff was really holding her back, and she was holding back. And so when it came out, why can't you just sign on? These 4 goals are like motherhood and apple pie. Why? What? This is bizarre. And what they said is that, and you're going to be shocked by this, I know, but that Nancy Pelosi has told all of the Democrats, do not sign your name to anything that says securing Social Security and Medicare. Why? Because we can't use that as an attack ad against our Republicans. So that's been a little bit of the trouble. I've been a Democrat my whole life, but that's been a little bit of the trouble. That's the games that get played in Washington. You can't even believe it, right? I was meeting with some of the union representatives, and I told them that, and they were so irate. And they said, that's exactly what's wrong. So when I've been in this space for a bit, this has been a new journey for me personally, but when I look at it, when, everybody's trying to figure it out, why is it? Why this dysfunction? Where did it start? To me, the big problem is party leadership. You won't hear it talked about a lot, and you're not going to hear lots of news stories, and the reason why is you will not get your phone calls returned if you start talking that way in Washington, right? But I think that's part of the problem on both sides. Nobody's immune. And I saw that up close with Evan Bayh, what he endured. So you may get that. And you may get that from Sherrod Brown. That may happen. And on the Republican side, you may hear a little bit more. What I've seen is I can't look like I'm going to talk to the other side. That's the kiss of death. So, although they want it in a general, they may not want it in a primary. So that's all I know, what I see.
Nancy, at the beginning you asked us what we're feeling about the current political environment. You talked about shame and disappointment. Well, from my perspective, it's hopelessness and despair. And whereas I love the idea of the postcards, the thing that continues to occur to me is what more could I be doing? So my question is really around the fundraising and the funding for No Labels. Certainly we saw with the President Obama's fundraising that $1 million $10 checks get you a lot of money. So what are you doing with respect to fundraising, and how can we be supportive to expand your impact?
It's great. So we do have a network. We have about 1 million people in our universe, and our hope is to grow it to about 2 million this year. So we do, and also my background's fundraising. So what do I spend a lot of my time doing every day is calling people, getting meetings, and trying to raise all of this. What I think is both are important for our citizens, but I will tell you what I think is so listen, we can always use another gift. There's no doubt about it. We have about 25 young staffers. Maureen, if you want to say, Maureen is our deputy director. I will say, I'll give a shout out to it's an interesting thing. If you saw our office, we don't look like everybody else. I'll be honest. Everybody's young. I am the oldest in it, but they're all young, dynamic, working, 7 days a week. Republicans, young people, everybody in their mid-20s. Maureen's probably one of the oldest. They're working together on that. But we spend our time really just raising money. The activation, we really want what we really want for citizens, because it's hard to ask people to do both, activate and money. We'd like it, is could we get our citizens really to activate, to go into these congressional offices. So when you say really what you can do, absolutely, a check is always helpful. What's even more helpful is going into that congressional office. Trust me, we've seen it. We have stories all over with our teams of citizens all over. They go into the office. We then follow up in Washington, and sure enough, people sign on the resolution. And then they start using us, then they start talking about us when they go around and speaking to their citizens and else. So I hope that answers.
Nancy, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's really very gratifying to hear you mention people by name. Janet Murguia of La Raza, who spoke here, Sherrod Brown, who's going to speak here on June 3rd. If anyone wants to ask him that question, you're invited. I'm sure he'll welcome it. I'm sure he will, actually. I mean, he loves the engagement. But I wonder, in this area of civic engagement and bringing people together, sometimes you're called on, or you're attracted to or drawn to an issue that is incredibly thorny. And I wonder if there is any issue that you just sort of are kind of punting on and saying, you know what, we can't bring this to our 73-member caucus right now because it'll blow it apart.
Yeah, I mean, we intentionally stay away from every single social issue. Right? I mean, they're important, but they're also the technique that a lot of our campaign folks use to get out the vote and stir up the fear and stir it up with everybody, and we're just not going to fall for that. So these are important issues, but the minute you start injecting that, so it's a no social issue zone, because everybody has their own personal beliefs, and we're Americans and we respect. But so that's where we cut a boundary. Yeah.
Thank you for coming to Cleveland, Nancy. I'm going to change subjects just briefly. You've worked for a lot of high-profile politicians. Mm-hmm. What was the one you enjoyed working with the most, and what's the most memorable moment?
Wow, I haven't. Listen, the Bill Clinton experience, because it was, driving around in a Datsun, in 1991, and the moment, it was November 9th. I remember it because it was my birthday. I was in the Arkansas mansion with about 10 people, and Hillary Clinton brought out my birthday cake, which was interesting. I was a young fundraiser. Listen, all of it was exceptional. Standing when he got elected on the Capitol grounds on the balcony and being able to be part of that with the United States governors, watching him take the oath of office. I think that was quite an exceptional moment. But I guess what it instilled in me, and so you sort of say, I'm doing it as a volunteer. I have a daughter and the 3 stepchildren and all of that, and I do. I am, sometimes just to my husband's discontent. I mean, I'm a person on a mission every day, with this. But what I learned with all of that, which is I'm trying to impart it to all of you, that small groups of people can make a difference. It wasn't a large group that started with this Governor Bill Clinton, and you can. And so all of you don't believe in that. You don't understand the power you have. And so that's, if I could instill anything back to you, is take that postcard, send it in, one step better, connect with Trey. Next step better is a group of you go into these offices. You're the voter. They work for you, and we tend to forget that. So I just want to keep reinforcing that.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for coming out today. Hi. Is there a generational or age-related function to hyperpartisanship versus collaboration? Do people get one way or the other as they age, or is there a lost generation that we hope will just flush through at some point?
Well, I'd almost like our friend that's our No Labels chapter. You know, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, we know it's so popular on these college campuses because they don't look at, they just believe in problem solving. But I'd love to hear, you know, maybe if you could tell us, how, you know, why it resonates with you personally and what's motivated you.
Well, my parents have always been involved in politics since I was a little kid. My dad ran against Mandela in '06. And I don't know, I've just always been involved in politics, and the University of Akron has a number of political organizations, the College Dems, the College Republicans. But to answer his questions in particular, I actually just saw a Gallup poll from 2014 that studied the age versus bipartisanship. And in their 20s or 30s, that group of voters are very bipartisan. And as they get older, they become increasingly partisan. So there is a generational relation there. But no, I really enjoy working with No Labels, especially the University of Akron. We just hosted some city council members last week, and they talked about how to, you know, vote in the primaries, just some Q&A about that. We had an Akron Press Club events with PG Sittenfield and Ted Strickland. So those are good events, and I mean, I do wish more young people would come out. It's a little hard, especially the University of Akron, because it's a commuter campus, to get people involved. And we're trying to connect with the other campuses in Ohio to do a bigger event. But no, it's definitely increasing in popularity. We've been, you know, doubling our outreach on social media. So it's going, and it's exciting to do. So
it's great. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I recognize the fact that Washington and the government in general seems to be polarized. But it seems to me that the reason for the polarization is that those people involved in the political process, at least in the primary season for both parties, tend to be very polarized themselves. And that we don't, I think many people will say they want, you know, government to work, but a lot of people don't get involved in the political process because they're so turned off by it. I'd like your thoughts on that.
You know, I think it's true. Listen, we have 318 million people that are in this country, and we have 230 million of those that are eligible to vote. And we know that 130 million vote, and 100 million people that could vote don't vote. And so, listen, you know, hopefully in the general election, we'll get more of these people out. And we do know that the majority of Americans in this country are these swing voters, these independents. I think it's about 40%. So this state's important, obviously, for the presidential contest and whoever's going to win. And, I have a feeling more people are paying attention to this election. I think you're going to see more of these voters that stay on the sidelines, those 100 million, that are going to get involved and vote. And we know from all the polling we've done, the majority of people in this country like stop fighting, start fixing, having our leaders be problem solvers, whether you're swing, and many Republicans and many Democrats as well. So we think it's the majority, and we'll look forward to the general.
Hi, I have a real simple question. I used to think it's simple. What's No Labels? I mean, I've heard about the organization, I've read about the organization, but I don't see how the No Labels connects to the organization.
You mean the name itself?
Yeah.
So what it means is putting labels aside, no labels, to solve problems. So that's how it connects. It doesn't mean we have proud Democrats, proud Republicans, proud independents. It's not about giving up your label. It's about putting it aside. No labels when you walk into this room so we can solve a problem. Because what happens, and I've seen it with why it breaks down with these Congress people, by the mere fact that a congressperson is going to walk into one of our rooms to start talking, people give them a chance, right? So if you're a Democrat, you're going to listen to them a little bit more because you're walking into a place where we can put those labels aside. You're open to that. I hope that makes more sense.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mrs. Jacobson, for coming today. My name is William E. Johnson. I'm a student at Cleveland State University, and my question is, I've listened to what you're doing, and I thank you for devoting your life's work to that, but on a college and campus level, what are your strategies and your tactics on engaging students on a college level? Because I know that at that age group, you have more bipartisanship and we are a more in a progressive mind state. So what are your strategies, and more importantly, what can we do as individually? What can I do at my respective campus and my respective school to bring no labels to Cleveland?
Oh, that's great. Well, first of all, Maureen will make sure to connect with you right after. Maureen's going to get you. We have 100 college chapter campuses that are organized, that are official, right? So these days, I don't think when we were going back to school, now you have to register your group, and you actually get some funding from the university. So the good news is we have 100 of those that are now permanent chapters at these universities. So we got to get you engaged. In fact, 100 of our students came out in New Hampshire, where I met Trey. We had in October this huge convention with 1,500 citizens, and a lot of the young people, they were right behind the stage right there. So what we're doing is we have 2 people in our offices, Will and Evan, that work every day. So Maureen's going to get you. We're going to talk to you about how to get it, sort of accepted by your university. And then we want you to keep expanding, selling the message. So we'll talk to you after.
Today at the City Club, we have been enjoying a Friday forum featuring Nancy Jacobson, founder and CEO of No Labels. Thank you, Mrs. Jacobson, Ms. Jacobson. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.